Political analysts here in Africa have been noting that the rights of Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese nationals should be respected. Otherwise, it will be evident that the world learned nothing from the 1994 genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi here in Rwanda. We have more on that as well. The fighting between the M23 rebel group and the DRC's armed forces and their allies that include the FDLR terrorist group that includes perpetrators of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi here in Rwanda has continued to have a terrible effect on Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese nationals, with hundreds of thousands having been forced to flee their homeland and others killed. M23 picked up weapons, saying it intended to remind the government in Kinshasa to implement the agreement it signed in 2013 that includes ensuring the security of its own citizens in the eastern part of that country and to include them in national programs that benefit all the country's people. The people in that region became part of the Congo when Africa was partitioned in Berlin during the 1884 conference there. The hatred towards that community intensified after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, when soldiers that belonged to the fallen Habyarimana regime, known as the ex-FAR, fled Rwanda into what was then Zaire with weapons, spreading their genocidal ideologies in what would later become the Democratic Republic of Congo. In December 1996, at the International Peace Academy in New York, Tanzania's first president, the late Julius Nyerere, who had served as head of state from 1964 to 1985, told the world that the problem of the Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese would never end as long as their own government continued to ignore it and deny its own people their rights as citizens.
So when we say respect that border, which was agreed between the Germans and the Belgians, we must also be saying respect the people whom you received under that petition. You can't turn around and say, we no longer want you. You are no longer citizens of our country. What are you going to do? Are you going to return them alone, or you return them with the piece of land? You can't say, go home where?
The words of Julius Nyerere have continued to ring true over the decades, with other African leaders urging the government in Kinshasa to stop burying its head in the sand when it comes to the issue of the rights of its own people.
Now, he contacted me to say, I've been appointed in this thing, what do you think? So we discussed the matter, and indeed I told him what I thought, that the first challenge to overcome is to get the Congolese to understand that is a Congolese problem. It doesn't originate from outside of the Congo, because of the population in the Kivus felt the need to defend itself.
Even political analysts recognize the simple truth that blaming other countries for a problem that is completely internal in nature is no better than pouring kerosene on an open flame, hoping to put it out.
The M23 are people of Tutsi origin who are Congolese. But they are now being told, no, you are not Congolese, you are Rwandese, and that is why you see the frequent accusations that the Rwandese government is supporting them in quite a number of neighbors. If such a conflict were to take place, and let people not be cheated, and President Kagame has been on record as saying that we don't want any conflict, but if it is brought on us, then we are going to defend ourselves to the last person. And that is exactly what is going to happen. The assumption that Rwanda is a little country that you can overwhelm in a few days is completely misguided.
The irony of all of this is that the silence of the international community on the issue has in itself spoken volumes about the nature of the problem. It seems just speaking the Kinyarwanda language is reason enough for a person to be put to death. People are being victimized for the way they look, the language they speak, and where they live. They did not choose for their homeland to become part of the Congo. It is history that made them what they are. Those who remember what happened in 1994 have chosen to forget. We live in a world that forgets too quickly. Just as UNAMIR was here saying that it would not use force to stop the genocide against the Tutsi, in the Congo, MONUSCO is there acting like what is happening doesn't concern them. The problem is the UN that refuses to change its ways.
Ikibazo ni icyaroni itavugururwa, itivugurura.
Political analysts also point out that some of the world's powers are allowing the problem in the eastern DRC to escalate because of their economic interests in that country, all the while with the DRC's government having chosen not to implement the Nairobi and Luanda Accords that sought a peaceful solution, agreements it committed to, and instead has resorted to war.